Syracuse has no chance to bounce back against SMU this week, right? Well, actually, history says not so fast.
You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer. Thank you for making us your first listen of every single day here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and we are always free and available wherever you get your podcast, whether you're watching Locked On Syracuse right now on YouTube or you're listening on your favorite audio platform. And on today's show, how should Syracuse handle Rickie Collins this Saturday against SMU? We'll discuss Syracuse's quarterback situation later on in the show. Plus, Syracuse has a big problem, particularly with its defensive line. We'll discuss that as well later on in the show. But first, Syracuse football in the Fran Brown era has shown a very unique ability to bounce back when facing adversity. We'll talk about that in just a moment, but first, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the app today. I understand, Syracuse fans, that it's hard to have a lot of optimism in this team right now after what we just witnessed on Saturday against Duke. In case you missed it, ladies and gentlemen, Syracuse lost on Saturday to the Duke Blue Devils at home in front of a sold-out crowd, 38-3. It was an embarrassing performance. I really don't think anyone played well outside the kicker and the punter. I don't care what Pro Football Focus says about Rickie Collins getting an 81 grade. PFF can take their grades, and you know what, you can fill in the blank of what they should do with them. That's neither here nor there. Okay? But what's important at this stage is that Syracuse football can turn the page completely. Fran Brown has coached 18 games for Syracuse football, and he owns a record of 13-5. He has never suffered back-to-back losses since taking over as the Syracuse head coach at the beginning of the 2024 season. And that streak, I'll admit, is in pretty big jeopardy because they're a pretty big underdog against SMU on the road on Saturday. But back to the stat of Syracuse under Fran Brown not suffering back-to-back losses. What it shows you is that Syracuse football with Fran Brown is very capable of bouncing back even from terrible performances, because we're going to go through all the losses in just a moment and how Syracuse was able to rebound following the loss. And it shows you also this, that Syracuse, every game is treated as its own separate game. They really don't let any negative momentum carry over into a following game as far as wins and losses, but it can also work both ways in how they can win a game and look great one week, and then the next week, they don't look that great the following week. They can be a little bit inconsistent at times as well. So let's go through now the losses in the Fran Brown era and how Syracuse responded after those losses. So I'm sorry that some of these might be a little bit traumatizing, but just so you know, I am a Syracuse fan. I am a Syracuse alum. So bear with me here too, because we're all in this together as we go through some of these losses in the Fran Brown era. They're not particularly fun, but we got to do it here on Locked On Syracuse. Stanford last year. Brutal heartbreaker. Absolutely brutal. Syracuse was flat in that game from the start. They rallied to take the lead in the fourth quarter, and they just blew it on a 4th and 9 thanks to a terrible play call, rushing 3, dropping 8, and not doubling a guy who's right now playing for the Tennessee Titans in Alec Manor. Terrible loss. How did Syracuse respond? Well, the Orange won their next 3 games following that loss to move to 5-1 in 2024. That includes a ranked win on the road in overtime against UNLV. That was a thriller. And an ACC win on the road against NC State. But then the Pitt Panthers. And honestly, up until maybe Saturday's game against Duke, this was the worst performance by Fran Brown Syracuse football team. They were pathetic in that Pitt game. They lost 41-13. If you recall, that was the game where Kyle McCord threw 1,000,005 pick sixes, which is a college football record, 1,000,005 pick sixes in one game. I'm surprised it was only 41-13. The math is just not mathing. That's neither here nor there. But anyway, Syracuse responded the following week by coming out flat against Virginia Tech, but rallying in the second half to get a comeback overtime victory. So they responded with a win. Then they have Boston College. Syracuse allowed over 300 rushing yards against Boston College last year, and they lost a close one. I believe it was 37-31. And if they were a little bit better on their run defense, they probably beat Boston College, and who knows what would have happened from there, right? Actually, we do know what happened from then on because we're about to talk about it right now here on Locked On Syracuse. They were not good against the run the following week against Cal, but they did beat Cal, and that was one of their better performances of the season. And then from then on, they did not lose the rest of the way in 2024. They had that thrilling win against Miami. They win the Holiday Bowl against Washington State. And so we essentially forgot about what happened against Boston College. In my opinion, I think that that's the most forgotten loss so far in the Fran Brown era because of what happened after they lost to Boston College. You beat Cal, you beat Miami, who was on the verge of being a playoff team last season. And then you win the Holiday Bowl against Washington State. So they bounced back just fine after losing that game to Boston College. 2025, Syracuse, week 1, they lost against Tennessee. They started out flat in that game. They did not perform in the first quarter, but then they kept it pretty competitive from then on out, but they still lost to Tennessee. How did they respond? Well, they did not come out great against UConn the following week, but they came back. They won that game in overtime. Still a very big victory on Syracuse's schedule. Imagine where they'd be if they did not get that win against UConn. If all else holds true, they're 2-3. And honestly, I don't think they'd be 2-3 right now if they had lost to UConn. They'd probably be 1-4. I don't know if they would have had the confidence to go into Clemson and win in Death Valley had they not staged that comeback against UConn. So it was a big victory for Syracuse football there. And then, of course, Syracuse responded by winning the next 2 games up until this past one against Duke. They dominate Colgate like they're supposed to, and then they go on the road in Death Valley for the first time in program history and walk away with a win. So how are they going to respond this Saturday against SMU? I guess that's the million-dollar question, and feel free to comment your thoughts in the comments section below. Do you give Syracuse a chance at pulling off this upset? I love your thoughts in the comments section below right now, but history says that Syracuse will actually beat SMU magically. I know that sounds crazy. It sounds nuts. It defies logic because on paper, we'll go through it over the next week here. I don't know if Syracuse really has much of a shot to really upset SMU, especially if they play like they did against Duke. But in the Fran Brown era so far, they're 13-5. And none of those losses have been back-to-back. So Syracuse, they still have a chance to bounce back this Saturday, rebound from the awful loss against the Duke Blue Devils. Now coming up, yes, I do expect that Syracuse is going to respond in a positive way, even if that doesn't necessarily translate to more wins. They will be better on Saturday against SMU, but one unit I am very much concerned for the game against SMU and for the rest of the season is this defensive line. And we'll talk about it next on Locked On Syracuse. Caffeine just got a flavor upgrade. 5-hour energy shots deliver tasty caffeine in 17 bold flavors. Each 2-ounce shot packs the caffeine of a premium 12-ounce cup of coffee, plus vitamins and nutrients with zero sugar and zero crashes. What I love most is how portable they are. Big taste, tiny shot. You can take it anywhere and get that boost when you need it. And honestly, I love how fast it kicks in and that it's sugar-free, so I don't have to worry about crashing later. Enough with boring, flavorless coffee. It's time to give your caffeine a flavor upgrade with 5-hour energy shots. Get the favorites you love or be bold and try something new in store and online at www.5hourenergy.com or Amazon today. Locked on Syracuse, I'm Jackson Holzer. We just discussed how Syracuse has shown a very unique ability to bounce back after losses in the Fran Brown era. And we're about to talk about one unit that is very concerning for Syracuse football moving forward. But first, thank you all so much for making it to this point of the podcast. I hope that means you enjoy Locked on Syracuse. And if so, if you can just do me a quick favor, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. It helps the channel grow to reach all Syracuse Orange fans. And of course, shout out and thank you to all those who continue to like and subscribe to Locked on Syracuse each and every day. You all are truly the best. Now, I'm going to give you some stats about the Syracuse defense through 5 games, which, spoiler alert, is nearly half the regular season. That's right. After Syracuse has its game against SMU, they are officially halfway through the 2025 regular season. Side note, can you believe how fast this season has already gone by? That we're 5 weeks through. That's crazy, right? Syracuse sitting at 3-2 in decent shape so far. But let's get to the numbers about this Syracuse defense, okay? Syracuse allows 174 rushing yards a game. They allow 5.4 yards per carry. Both of those stats I just mentioned are dead last in the ACC. And when I say dead last, I actually mean dead last because it's not particularly close to any of the other teams that are ranked ahead of them in the ACC, which is all of them because Syracuse is in last place in rushing defense, rush yards, and yards allowed a carry. Syracuse also has 6 sacks through 5 games in 2025. That is second worst in the conference. So woohoo, they are not last at getting to the quarterback in the conference. Who are they ahead of? North Carolina, who stinks and has played 1 less game than Syracuse football this season. That's the only team. And so theoretically, if North Carolina gets 3 sacks in their next game, they could be ahead of Syracuse with 1 less game. So yeah, this defense is a dangerously bad combo here where they do not stop the run and they do not get to the quarterback. Syracuse's leader in sacks through 5 games. Leader in sacks through 5 games is Brahim Long. Brahim Long is a defensive back, and he is leading the team with 2 sacks in 5 games. That's simply not good enough if you are Syracuse football. He is a defensive back. Remember David Reese, the transfer that Syracuse brought in from Cal? 11 sacks over the past 2 seasons playing in a power conference. Where has he been this season? Because David Reese has half a sack and 2 tackles for loss in 5 games. 11 sacks the past 2 years. What happened? Where did that pass rushing ability go? I don't know, and he's an 8th-year senior, but he's not the only one. I'm not just picking on David Reese, trust me. So what do you do with the Syracuse football defensive line? Now, I know a lot of you in the comment section below are in this camp, and don't worry, I'm getting into that camp soon. Don't worry, trust me. Which is to fire the defensive coordinator. Fire Elijah Robinson. That is the solution for the Syracuse football defense. And look, if this continues, I'm fully on board with you if that is your opinion that Syracuse needs to make a change at defensive coordinator, because last year the defense wasn't very good and it had more talent. It had more NFL talent and it still wasn't very good with Elijah Robinson. And this year, it's even worse. It is worse than what it was in 2024. And someone at the end of the day, assuming this continues, is going to have to fall on the sword. It's got to happen. Someone has to fall on the sword here. He's the defensive coordinator. His defenses are unacceptable. They can't stop the run. They can't get to the quarterback. But it's not as simple as change the defensive coordinator and everything is going to be okay. This program, this is just looking broad here, needs to invest significantly more resources into its defensive line. Significantly more. Let's go through their additions and subtractions this season, okay? Syracuse football lost their two best defensive linemen from a year ago, one of which was due to eligibility. That was Fadil Diggs, okay? They got Fadil Diggs in the transfer portal from Texas A&M. He was great for Syracuse last year. He was a bright spot along that defensive line. The other bright spot was Murad Watson, a true freshman who entered the spring portal and got a bag and a bag and a half, maybe two bags to go over and play for the Texas Longhorns. How did Syracuse respond? How did they replace those guys? Glad you asked. Syracuse football added in the portal George Rooks, who was ranked 918th overall in the portal per 24/7 Sports. They added Chris Thomas from Marshall, ranked 1,040 in the transfer portal per 24/7 Sports, and David Reese ranked 1,233. So I guess we shouldn't have had high expectations for David Reese, but I think that's more because of the fact he's an eighth-year senior. You only have him for 1 year, so there's no long-term upside with a guy like David Reese. But he had 11 sacks in the past 2 years in a power conference. But so far, he is definitely playing like the 1,233rd best player overall in the transfer portal. And I understand that Syracuse, they don't have the biggest budget in the world. They are not going to be able to, on face value, go dollar for dollar with a program like Texas. If Texas wants a Syracuse player, Texas is probably going to be able to outbid Syracuse for said player. But there's got to be better investment by Syracuse football. It's just plain and simple. It's got to be a lot better because what we're seeing right now on the field from this defensive line can't get to the quarterback, can't stop the run. It's just not acceptable. We're 5 games into this year. They can't do either of those things. You combine those transfer portal ads with what Syracuse retained for this season, which veteran returners like Dennis Jacques and Kevin Jobity, neither of those guys prior to this season have proven that they could be plus starters at a power conference level. And guess what? They are definitely not plus starters right now in a power conference. And now you start to realize how Syracuse can't stop the run and can't get to the quarterback. And to top it all off, Syracuse has had nobody break out along the defensive line. Not one single player has broken out for Syracuse along the defensive line. So let's recap Let's recap everything right here, okay? With this defensive line and why it has not performed this season. Number one, you lost significant talent from a year ago. Fadil Diggs and Murad Watson, they're gone. How did you replace them? Glad you asked. They did not make good transfer portal additions. All of them have not been very good for Syracuse football. Number three, you got no plus key returning players along that defensive line, aside from maybe Tank Wilson, and that's about it. And then finally, you got no breakout players, young or old, along the defensive line. How about that? So my message is prove me wrong. I'd love to be wrong about this defensive line. Here's the deal with Syracuse, okay? I'm a Syracuse fan. I'm a Syracuse alum. I would rather be wrong and happy than right and miserable. Does that make sense? I would rather be wrong. When I speak negatively about Syracuse, I want to be wrong. I want to be wrong because I want Syracuse to win and I want them to be amazing, right? So prove me wrong is what I am saying. I want this to be wrong, but as of right now, we're 5 games in, nearly halfway through this season. If Syracuse is going to have a successful 2025, if they're going to manage to make a bowl game at this point, which is really the only goal because they're not going to compete for the ACC. If they're going to make a bowl, I think it's going to be in spite of this defensive line. It's not going to be because the defensive line magically gets better. I hope to be wrong, but I don't think they're going to get much better. There's nobody else that's walking through that door this season. Fadil Diggs is not coming back. He can't. Neither is Murad Watson. He's at Texas. Maybe if he wants to enter the portal after this year, sure, but right now he can't come back. I don't see how this defensive line is really going to improve this season. So I would expect that a lot of teams are going to be able to run the ball well on Syracuse. I don't expect that Syracuse is going to be able to generate much of a pass rush from here on out. So if they manage to win 6-7 games this year, I don't think it's going to be because of their defensive line. It's going to be because Syracuse was very good or just better in every other aspect of the game. And well, their defensive line was their main weakness. Comment your thoughts in the comments section below. Am I wrong? Am I being too harsh on this defensive line? Comment in the comments section below. Again, I hope to be wrong. Now, coming up, what is the plan for Syracuse football at the quarterback position this Saturday? Should Rickie Collins start the game? Should Rickie Collins be pulled if he's struggling? We'll talk about that next on Locked On Syracuse. One of the tools that help make a big difference for business owners is Quo, formerly known as OpenPhone. It's the same great business phone system you've heard me talk about before, just with the new name, and here's why it matters. Every missed call is money left on the table. When every customer conversation counts, you need a phone system that helps you connected 24/7. Quo is the #1 business phone system that streamlines customer communications. It works right through an app on your phone or computer, so no more carrying 2 phones or relying on a landline. Whether you're a solo operator juggling everything or part of a larger team, Quo makes it easy to stay responsive and professional. See why over 90,000 businesses trust Quo, formerly OpenPhone. Get started free and 20% off your first 6 months at quo.com/lockedoncollege. That's QUO.com/lockedoncollege. And if you've got existing numbers with another service, Quo will port them over at no extra charge. Quo, no missed calls, no missed customers. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Whether you're a casual fan or love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better, or you're just probably placing a bet against your favorite team, perhaps. I'm a New York Jets fan, so maybe I place a bet on the Miami Dolphins as emotional insurance. Or as a New York Jets fan, maybe I should be placing it on the New York Jets because I actually want them to lose the game, because I want them to tank for a better draft pick. They got no hope in the future. They might as well just lose every single game this season. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. Oh, this is a question that's going to get everyone going, shall we? What should Syracuse football do at quarterback this Saturday against SMU? Last week, Rickie Collins made his first career collegiate start, and it did not go well. As I said at the very top of the show, I don't care what Pro Football Focus said about Rickie Collins. He did not perform, and the only thing to it is that he was not the only one that didn't perform. Nobody showed up against the Duke Blue Devils on Saturday. So what do you do this week against SMU? Comment your thoughts right now in the comments section below. Here's where I'm at. First of all, I don't think there's any debate with this. You're starting Rickie Collins. You're starting Rickie Collins. Let's just get that out of the way. I do not envision a world where Syracuse, barring some sort of injury or some sort of disciplinary action, is going to start anyone else at quarterback on Saturday but Rickie Collins. Rickie Collins will start against SMU. Now, what do you do from there? Perhaps if Rickie Collins struggles, do you maybe turn to the alternative? We'll get to that in just a second. I'm in the camp of Rickie Collins, barring injury, should play the entire game. That's right. I want Rickie Collins to play wire to wire this Saturday against SMU. Now, you might be wondering, Jackson, why did you have a quick trigger on Steve Angeli? Because in case you missed it, back all the way in week 2, I wanted Syracuse to turn to Rickie Collins at one point in that UConn, actually at several points in the UConn game, because Steve Angeli was not performing, and I wanted to see what Syracuse had in its backup quarterback in Rickie Collins, who at the time was said to be neck and neck with Steve Angeli in the quarterback competition. But I want Rickie Collins playing the entirety of the game against SMU. Why is this situation different? The reason why I had a quicker trigger on Angeli is because the alternative was Rickie Collins. Rickie Collins is in his 3rd year of college football. And even though he doesn't have a ton of actual in-game experience, he has been in college for 3 years. If he is not ready to play at this point, I don't know if he's ever going to be ready to play. Again, year 3 for Rickie Collins. Time to show us what you got. You now go to this situation. The alternative to Rickie Collins is a true freshman in Luke Carney. And look, I got high hopes in Luke Carney. I think he's got a fantastic future for Syracuse football. And we can really break it all down during the bye week, what Syracuse does moving forward with the quarterback situation, not just in 2025, but for 2026, 2027, the Steve Angeli injury timeline, all that. We can do multiple podcasts dissecting all the different realities with Syracuse football at quarterback. But for this season right now, I have a hard time believing that Luke Carney is truly ready to see the field against ACC competition. It's one thing when he had to come in for one play against Colgate. I mean, that was one play in the 4th quarter, soft landing, low leverage situation. Happy for him that he got his first career touchdown. I think we're all happy that he got his first career touchdown along with everyone else who got their first career touchdowns in that game. But is he really ready to be thrown into the fire against SMU because Rickie Collins is struggling? That's how you want Luke Carney to get his first action for real? I understand that if Rickie Collins gets injured, that's another thing. And knock on wood, I really hope that doesn't happen. Then Luke Carney would be forced to play. But there is no reason to rush him at this point in his development. Let him grow. He already is one snap away. There is no point at this stage to turn to Luke Carney just because Rickie Collins may be struggling against SMU. If anything, the earliest I would want to see Luke Carney is after the bye when Syracuse plays Pitt. At least give him the bye week to prepare. At least give him the bye week before you might want to consider putting in another quarterback. Rickie Collins is a 3rd-year veteran in college football. Luke Carney is a true freshman who's got a ton of upside, but he is a true freshman. So I'm in the camp of Rickie Collins, whether he's slinging it, throwing for 400 yards and 4 touchdowns, or whether he's doing the opposite of that, which is just throwing to the other team. He's got 200 yards and 3 interceptions. I want to see him play the entire game against SMU and not have the quick trigger to go to Luke Carney. Comment your thoughts in the comment section below, what you would do at the quarterback position if you were in charge of Syracuse football. Now, as far as what's coming up on the podcast in the future, tomorrow we will begin our preparation for SMU this Saturday. We're also going to do a crossover edition here on Locked On Syracuse once again with the host of Locked On SMU. So stick around later in the week for that. Also, I want to bring your attention to this. We have not talked about basketball here on Locked On Syracuse in quite a while. Mostly football content for good reason. We're in the height of football season. But we are about 1 month away from Syracuse football, or Syracuse basketball. See, I already had a slip right there. We're about 1 month away from Syracuse basketball. So, ladies and gentlemen, here's the deal. During the bye week, we have all this time. There will be at least one episode dedicated towards Syracuse basketball. So I'm sorry, Syracuse basketball fans who come here because they want Syracuse basketball news and updates. Haven't done it in a while, but we will get back to some Syracuse basketball next week after Syracuse faces SMU in football. So that's what's coming up on Locked On Syracuse in the near future. And folks, thank you all so much for watching. Thank you all so much for listening. If you like this podcast, be sure to hit that like button. If you really enjoy the podcast, be sure to hit subscribe. Tell all your friends about Locked On Syracuse, and I will see you all again soon.